Welcome, everyone, to the Courageous Leadership Colloquium. I am here today with Jennifer Cousineau, who is an educator, researcher, and advocate for holistic well-being here at the University of Olivet. Jennifer, we're so excited that you're here with us. Jennifer is going to share with us in an interactive session where we will engage with some mindful movement and breath work and reflection to help us as courageous leaders stay grounded. And so I'm going to just give that preview and turn it over to you, Jennifer. Thank you so much for joining us and for helping us to stay grounded.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. I would just like to welcome everybody to this space. It looks like I looked at the schedule and you guys have some great speakers that you have listened to over the last few days. If you're able to, just for a moment, if you could just turn on your cameras just for a moment, just so I can say hello and not just read the name, but actually see the face, that would be fantastic. If you're unable to, if you're driving or whatnot, completely understand. But just to say hello to the people behind the camera would be, or people behind the name would be great. So I'll give you a moment to be able to do that. Hey, hello. It's nice to see you. Where are you joining from?
I'm in Blair Hall. I'm the hall director for Blair, so I'm listening as I'm doing other stuff.
Well, it's good to meet you or see you. Yeah, how's Blair Hall today?
Doing well, pretty quiet.
Good.
After they drilled some stuff in the outside wall for our boiler, I assume.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy that you're here today. I'm really looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Looks like the other people, maybe they are busy doing some other things in the meantime. So with this presentation, it will be interactive. So I'll guide you through a few elements and I'll ask you some questions as well that allow you to participate in the knowledge and the content that we're sharing together. So with that being said, the first thing I'm going to ask of you is, you guys have probably been in meetings throughout the entire morning. And with this one, I would like for you to set an intention that you honor how you feel. So that is going to be our intention for today's time together. So if you don't already, get comfortable where you are, get comfortable in your seat. Notice that the temperature is okay in the room. If you're a little chilly, grab a sweatshirt. If you're a little warm, maybe take off the sweatshirt and put on a short sleeve, something like that. Have water close by. Just make yourself comfortable in your environment, because part of mindfulness is noticing how we feel and honoring those asks when they show up. So I just want to set that intention right at the beginning to make yourself comfortable in your space. Maybe that means, you've been seated all morning and you can get up and walk around when you'd like. You can stretch when you'd like. Maybe enjoy a little snack, a little mid-morning snack. So just begin to honor those sensations as they arrive and as they show up together. So a little background on myself. So I do teach here at the university in the Health and Human Performance Department. I teach stress management, which is one of my favorite courses to teach. It is really, I think, where one of my main passions really lie. I have been working in performance improvement for several years now. Some of the larger things that I've created in my time working in the field is that I've created a pilot initiative, a pilot program in a class at Michigan State that works with the musicians there in their department to help them with stress management skills, mindfulness techniques to decrease their anxiety before they perform, which is a really fun class to teach. And then I've also developed a program for an inpatient psychiatric unit where I work with the inpatient clients to help them develop mindfulness skills so that they can manage stress and negotiate with stressors easier once they depart the facility. I also partner with agencies and bring workshops, much like I'm going to bring to this leadership summit today. So I'm really excited to share this knowledge with you. And if at any point you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Even if it's after this workshop presentation, you can email me. Like I said, I'm at Olivet. You can also ask Dr. Corey, and I'm sure she can pass along any questions that you may have. So the first thing that I would like for you to do is just take a moment to consider, what does mindfulness mean to you? So when we think about mindfulness, what does that bring to mind? What type of research have you maybe noticed in the field? When I mentioned that mindfulness can help with leadership, it can help with performance, it can help with stress management. How do you think those mechanisms may function? How do you think they coordinate and interact with each other? So I'd just like for you to take a moment to consider what you already know about mindfulness, and then also consider what you might like to learn today through our discussion. So just take a moment. I'll just give you a few minutes to write those thoughts down. So again, what you may know already about the topic in regards to performance or leadership or stress management, and then what you might like to know. So what's something you hope to gain? I'm going to give you another moment. Now we're going to get into today's content. So we're going to breach these subjects a little bit further and discuss some of the data behind mindfulness, some of the mechanisms that we can use to tap into mindfulness and the benefits that they provide. And then at the end, if there are any questions that you feel like you still have that weren't present in today's topic or today's materials, please feel free to ask those. If I have time, I can answer them at the end. Or if we run out of time, then that's something that you can reach out to me, or you can address to Dr. Corey and she can send along to me for me to address. So some of our goals with our material today is that I would like to discuss the research behind the positive impacts of mindfulness on the body, on emotion regulation, on stress reduction. And as Dr. Corey shared earlier, we will do some experiential learning. So we will actually try some of these mechanisms out, and you will see for yourself how they show up within you and how they're tapping into our parasympathetic nervous system. And we'll make a plan on the implementation of these different topics to our daily endeavors. So first of all, just beginning with a common vernacular, so common definition of mindfulness. So mindfulness can be thought of as a connection between the mind and body. That sounds really simple, right? But in all actuality, a lot of our day we spend on autopilot. So think about, throughout our day when we're driving someplace, and we have the habit of always going the same way to the same spot. And even if it's a Saturday or Sunday, oops, you find yourself driving to work, right? Why? Because we're on autopilot. We function in this space of repetition and routine, and mindfulness helps bring us out of that repetition and routine. So it's a really powerful tool that can be used to decrease anxiety, can be used to increase performance. It's really interesting, the data around that. It can be used to decrease rumination. And rumination is a really interesting concept when we look at performance and when we look at burnout rates and compassion fatigue in a lot of fields. So it's a very interesting finding from the research and the literature. We'll talk more about that as we get along through our content today. Mindfulness very often is thought of as an Eastern practice, meaning, it's coming from like Asia, it comes from India and Japan, but we're seeing an integration of these concepts into more of our scientific research, and a lot of evidence is being created regarding the impact and the positive impacts it can have on performance. We see it integrated into fields like psychology and DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, which is a form of talk therapy that also integrates mindfulness practices like breath and yoga and movement, fostering emotion regulation through the practices. We see mindfulness being dropped into cognitive behavioral therapies as well. And then we also see mindfulness practices being used in performance improvement. So we see it in the field of athletics. I mean, who amongst us remember J.J. Abrams, right? The quarterback from U of M, who was meditating on the field, right? He brought a lot of awareness to meditation and mindfulness as a performance improvement technique within the field of athletics. We also see it being used in the field of business. So we see CEOs, we see businesses that reach out to my business, which I own, and I do a lot of collaboration with businesses on wellness programs to decrease staff burnout and also just to increase performance overall. So we're seeing mindfulness very much being integrated into performance improvement plans for entire organizations. Really interesting. So question for you, as I said, I'm going to attempt for this to be interactive. On your Zoom, you have the ability to choose a emoji. What I'd like for you to do is, if you are familiar with the autonomic nervous system, if you're familiar with the branches and what they do, I would like for you to do a thumbs up. If you're unfamiliar or you're somewhat familiar, you might know of it, but you're not really sure what they might consist of or what they do, then do a thumbs down. So I am going to ask for you to find your emojis on here. I'll give you a minute just to find them. And then again, if you're familiar with the autonomic nervous system, please give me a thumbs up and let me know that you're familiar. If you're moderately familiar or you've heard it, but you don't really know what it is, then that would be a thumbs down. I see at least one thumbs up. I know it can take a minute to find the emojis in there. Oh, I see another thumbs up. I see another thumbs up. Oh, I see another thumbs up. Very cool. Okay. Thank you for doing that, you guys. So now I see you can remove the thumb. Yeah, nice job. Now I can see that there's a lot of familiarity with the nervous system. That's really helpful. And that's going to help us for our discussion today. So just a quick overview, since you guys are so familiar with it. So when we are in a space of stress or challenge, we have a tendency to access and activate our sympathetic nervous system, which we can see here from this really nice infographic, that in those moments we are heightened for action. So we're heightened into fight or flight. So we have muscle tension, we have adrenaline being released, cortisol being released, epinephrine being released, right? Our resources are really going towards survival in that moment, for the fight moment or the runaway moment. When we're in parasympathetic, it's kind of the opposite system. So one way I remember that is P, parasympathetic, is peaceful. S, sympathetic, is stress, right? So that's a way to quick way to remember the access between the two. When we're in parasympathetic, our heart rate slows, our blood pressure declines, and our muscle tension abates, starts to ease away. But there's also interesting findings in parasympathetic that we have more activity in our prefrontal cortex, which is critical for performance. So prefrontal cortex is responsible for our executive thought. So it allows us to plan, it allows us to weigh the consequences before we just act. It allows us to tap into all of the performance that we've done, the training, the practice before the actual speech. It allows us to find those spaces and access that part of our neural network. So it's a really interesting finding. So that's one of the reasons why we see mindfulness being tapped into performance, is because of that access to that neural network. All right, so you guys are familiar with that. So I'm just going to go by those slides. So how does it feel when we're in these states? So when we're in sympathetic, when we experience that space of stress, again, we might find that muscle tension, our heart rate goes up, our blood pressure goes up, our respiratory rate might quicken, and our breath might shallow and lessen. So we breathe faster and shorter. And now how we might feel anxious. How we might think, we might be very scattered, right? So it's hard for us to really focus because there's so many things happening. In sympathetic, our heart rate comes down, our blood pressure comes down, our muscle tension releases, and we're able to feel peaceful in the body. We might feel serene, calm, and in the mind, we're able to focus. So we're able to think clearly and access all of that practice and all of that knowledge that we have to perform at our best. So that's one of the reasons why we want to shift in and find the techniques to be able to shift into parasympathetic activation in our system. So now that we know that mindfulness can do this, what are techniques that we could access that bring us into this space of clarity? So this space that we can find where we can perform at our best. And that's what we're going to talk about next together. So mechanisms of mindfulness, one of the most commonly discussed ones and probably one of the most familiar ones, and the one that I just referenced with J.J. Abrams, the former quarterback from U of M, was meditation, right? Remember meditation, he would meditate on the sidelines, he'd take off his shoes. It was kind of amazing, right? But my question for you is, what comes to your mind when you hear the word meditation, right? So just think about that for a second. Like if you were to just picture, if you were to describe, what is meditation? What does that picture look like? What does that activity look like? And we are going to do another engagement together. So I am going to show you a few slides, and I'd like for you to know through thumbs up if you feel like this is meditation, or thumbs down if you feel like it's not. There's no wrong answer per se. I'm just curious, okay? So here we go. First one, is this meditation? So thumbs up if you think like this is meditation, or thumbs down if you feel like it's not. What do you guys think? Is this meditation? Oh, I see some thumbs up. Hey, yeah, this could absolutely be a type of meditation. And in all actuality, this is probably the most commonly understood form of meditation. Very often when, I were to talk to people, what's meditation? They think it's someone seated, someone staying still, someone with their eyes closed, right? So we're reducing a lot of our distractions. We're closing our eyes so we can feel the sensations within us. Maybe it's quiet in the space. We're decreasing our movement so that way we can just focus on the sensations within us. So yes, this is a form of meditation, and this is the most commonly identified form of meditation. Next question. Do you think this is meditation? Is this meditation? Thumbs up if you think it is, thumbs down if you do not. Oh, I see a thumbs up. I see a few thumbs up here. I see a few more thumbs up. Okay. So yeah, this could absolutely be a form of meditation. We can have moving meditation. I was discussing this presentation with my partner, before I did this, and I was putting it together, and I was asking them the same question. I said, do you think this is meditation? And they practice yoga with me all the time. And they were like, no. And I said, why don't you think this is meditation? And they were like, because I have to concentrate so hard on every pose. And there's so much stuff happening that I feel like I'm not really in my body in that moment. And that can be truthful too, right? So that's why it's such a unique, interesting question. But there can be forms of moving meditation that we can get into. So when we're in yoga, for a lot of us, that's meditation. When we're in something like Tai Chi or Qigong, that can be meditative movement as well. So just keeping that in mind. Next question, is this meditation? What do you guys think? Thumbs up, yes. Thumbs down, no. I don't see the responses yet. I'm curious what you guys are going to say. Oh, I see a thumbs up. Thanks, Kelly. I see another thumbs up from Brad. Thanks, Brad. Thanks, Court. Oh, yeah. Elena, nice job too. So yes, this can be a form of meditation. So when we're doing things that we love, now we all might meditate, but we don't realize it. And that's one of the interesting findings around the field is whenever we're in something where time flies, when you're painting, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's like an hour later, or, the coloring meditations that you might do. Or maybe it's cooking and you like get cooking or you get baking and you're like, oh my gosh, where'd the time go? Or knitting or anything, playing a musical instrument, anything where you shift and you just are able to release rumination. So remember how I said that would come back up again. So rumination, we all experience rumination too. It's that moment that you continue to replay in your head. So it's like this tape that just won't shut off. And it's something usually that's about the past or the future, right? Something that is really unchangeable in this moment. So it's like the past, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that sentence that way. I can't believe I asked that question. I wish that I could rewrite that one sentence in my email. And it just keeps replaying over and over in your head. Even when you are away from work, even when it's Saturday and you're with your family at the zoo, all you can think about is, oh, why didn't I spell check my email before I sent it one more time? That's rumination, right? When we shift into parasympathetic activation, when we shift into mindfulness, what we find is we're able to release that tape, that audio that just keeps replaying in our head that's creating anxiety within us. So that's one of the reasons why organizations would like a mindfulness program for their staff, is because it allows for the staff to have time away from work that is truly away from work, decreasing compassion fatigue in medical, social work, education, business, and also creating or releasing burnout that we might see in some really high demand fields. So really interesting work around that. So yes, this can be a form of meditation. Next question for you. Is this meditation? What do you guys think? Thumbs up, yes. Thumbs down, no. Oh, I see a thumbs up. I see a few thumbs up there. Hey, I see a lot of thumbs up. Yes, this can be a form of meditation. So sport can absolutely be a form of meditation. In fact, before I found yoga, I was an avid runner. And for me, one of the things I loved about running is that my mind got quiet and focused. I could release whatever was bothering me. I spent like 15 years in social work before I came into education. And social work is a high demand field. And it's not only that you're replaying what you've already done, but you're replaying what you have to do on Monday, right? You're like, oh my gosh, I have this audit that's coming up, the state's coming through, or the higher learning education is coming through to go see what we're doing. There's always these demands that you have. But what mindfulness can do is it can bring you back to your time away from work and have you really benefit from that time away from work. It allows you to kind of reboot and reset. And sports is a great form of meditation, or it can be. Athletics, movements, anything that enters you into what we call a flow state. So again, where time flies and you're like, wow, I can't believe an hour just went by. That's a flow state. So meditation can be all of these things. It can be seated with your eyes closed with limited distractions and limited movement. Meditation can also be moving meditations like yoga or sport or running or qigong or tai chi. It can be anything where we enter a flow state, anything where our problems from before begin to abate and fade. And very often the benefit of this is that even when you exit that flow state, even when you put away your violin, you put up your guitar, you put away the basketball, you still feel positive, right? You still feel centered and grounded and focused, and you feel ready for whatever's next, right? It's like, I consider it almost like a reboot of our body and our mind. So we're able to kind of just reset our system. Well, really interesting. So when we talk about meditation and mindfulness, think about as we are now learning the benefit of it to keep us invested in work, to keep us so that we can show up and be productive and produce good work each day. Think about activities that maybe you say, I don't have enough time for that, right? I'm too busy for that. And maybe there are activities that bring you into this space of flow, and recognize the benefit that they may provide to you, and know that if you give yourself those moments in those space, that your presentation will be 10% stronger, that your paper will be 15% better, right? If you just put those books away for a minute and go out and enjoy a reset, that way you can come back with a whole different mindset and a whole different mentality. So really interesting. So what's going on in the body when we meditate and we enjoy mindfulness? This slide is one of my favorites because I love the connection between hormones and behavior. And I really like looking at biology and empirical research, meaning like things that are objective that you can look at. So some of the things that we see, and I mentioned this earlier, is when you're in parasympathetic, we have more activity in our prefrontal cortex, which is really important for complex thought and emotion regulation. So we're seeing activity there. And not only do we see activity there when we're in these spaces, but there's an increase in the neural network in those spaces of the brain. So that means that we're actually accessing those more, even when we're not in our flow state, even when we're not in our meditative practice, that we have those neural networks that are formed through those spaces and allow us to perform better when we're in other aspects of our identity in our life. So it changes our neural network and capacity. We see changes in the prefrontal cortex for executive thought. We see changes in the hippocampus, which is really important for memory, right? And we see changes in spaces like the cerebellum. The cerebellum is really important for coordination and for balance. So really interesting work there. We also see that there are changes in how we feel emotionally. So when we tap into mindfulness spaces or meditation, what we find is that we have a decrease in negative emotions. So think negative, sadness, loneliness, depression, fear, and then think positive, like happy, serene, excited, calm, right? These are kind of more happy or positive emotions. So what we see through mindfulness and through meditation is that we see changes in the neural network that can benefit us outside of mindfulness, so outside of meditation, in our work, in our performance. And then we also see that it's like that reboot to our system where we actually feel better. So it's pretty cool. The research is very intriguing behind this topic. We even see a difference in our brain waves. So this is an interesting slide because it looks at an EEG. So we're looking at the electrical waves happening in the mind. And we can see here like the different stages of sleep there on the right. And on the left, what we see is what's happening in the neural network when we're in mindfulness and meditation. So what we see is that our brain waves are similar to alpha waves, or we're creating alpha waves when we're in mindfulness and meditation. Alpha waves are very closely associated or correlated with creative thought. So when we're able to kind of have that light bulb moment where we can solve the problem that maybe we were ruminating on and echoing in our head and we felt like we were at a dead end, then we step away and say, let's forget about the problem for a moment. Let's do some deep breathing. Let's go do a little art. Let's go into a flow state for a little bit. Once we do that, we might come back and say, there's this connection and I didn't see it before. So very often you need that break just to reset, to come back and have a different mindset and a different perspective of approach. We see that when we're in meditation and mindfulness, a change in our brainwaves that align with theta brainwaves, which are active during learning and memory and emotion regulation. So we see changes happening in the mind and the brain, and there are things that we can check that are objective, which I feel like the best research looks at objective measurements like muscle tension, blood pressure, cortisol levels, epinephrine, and they can also do self-assessments on things like your mood shifting. So happiness, sadness, depression. I feel like when you can look at something that collaborates at all of it, it makes the picture and the relationship stronger. So how does this feel? When we're meditating, how does it show up? Well, many of us know this already. We just may not have called it meditation. So when we're in these spaces of flow, we feel like we're decreasing that internal noise, right? So we're better able to focus. You're not thinking about 10 minutes ago. You're not thinking about 2 days from now. All you're thinking about is that moment, and you're concentrating and focusing on performance in that moment. In that sense, too, we are practicing emotion regulation in mindful moments. Why? Because mindfulness allows us to shift from distraction back to our original goal. And we do that a lot in our mindful practices. We do that a lot in practices that are led by other people as well. So if we are in like a yoga class, the instructor will always be calling us back to our breath. Why? Because they want us to get to the space where we can go from our internal noise or from our external distractions into a space of focus again. And again, we're seeing those changes in the neural structure of the brain, which is such intriguing work. So we're seeing changes in the neural networks that are being utilized when we practice mindfulness on a frequent basis. So what I'd like for you to do now is just pause for a moment. And earlier you wrote what mindfulness means and what you'd like to learn from it. Just pause for a moment and write down maybe like one fact that you've learned so far, or one interesting element that you're like, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that it was increasing activity in the prefrontal cortex, or it's associated with a change in the neural structure of the brain in the hippocampus for memory, or the neural network in the prefrontal cortex for executive thought and emotion regulation. Maybe you're right that you didn't know that you were practicing meditation all the time, but you just didn't call it that. So what's one thing that you've learned so far in today's presentation? Just taking a moment to jot that down. All right. So we are going to do our first activity together today. And this one is something that's very useful. I'm going to lead us through a meditation that accesses a specific type of breathing. This breathing is really important. Why? Because the research behind it shows that it's accessing parasympathetic. It's a very rich, full breath. And what they find is that on the deeper lobes of the lungs, that's where there are nerve endings for the parasympathetic nervous system. So we want our breath to be rich and full. Why? Because we want to tap into the sensations and the benefits of that autonomic response within us. So if you'll let me, I'd love to guide you through this breathing technique. So the first thing I want you to do is get comfortable. So wherever you're seated, find yourself comfortable, right? Maybe see if there are distractions that you can remove from around you. Notice if you're thirsty. If you're thirsty, enjoy a drink of water. Just notice how you feel. Coming back to our original intention of honoring the ask. And then when you feel ready, place one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. So one hand heart, one hand belly. Now for this breathing technique, what we're going to do is we're going to let both hands grow tall as you breathe in. So we're giving time for our inhalation. The belly expands, the ribs expand, your shoulders grow taller. And we're giving time for the exhalation. Your shoulders soften, your ribs soften, your belly softens. Just a few more rounds of breath, just like the last. Giving time for your inhalation. Give time for the expansion of the belly and the ribs. Give time for your exhalation. Begin to notice how it feels to breathe in. Notice how the muscles expand through the belly, through your core, intercostals, through the ribs, up into your shoulders. Notice how the muscles respond to the exhales, how your shoulders soften, your ribs soften, your belly softens, and even maybe your low back softens. Next round of breath, notice the temperature of the air as you breathe in. Notice that the air is cool. Maybe it's refreshing. Notice the temperature of the air as you breathe out. Muscles soften, the breath is turned warm. Next round of breath, just like the last. Cool and expansive, giving time for the inhale. Warm and softening, giving time for your exhale. Gently release your hands down away from the belly, away from the heart. Now notice how you feel after that breath. Maybe you feel peaceful, right? Maybe you feel a little sleepy, right? Remember that parasympathetic is very often referred to as rest and digest, right? So it might make you feel a little focused. We've brought down our blood pressure. We've brought down our heart rate. We've also brought down our stress hormones, meaning that our cortisol is lower, our adrenaline, our epinephrine, right? So the breath is a really interesting way that we can access parasympathetic. And that breath technique is very helpful for that. What's really great about that technique too is you don't have to do it for 10 minutes. You can do like one breath or 2 breaths or 3 breaths. So the next time that you have something that's a challenge, something where you're like, oh, I got to do this test, or I have a big exam, or oh my gosh, I'm going to do an interview for a job, or I'm doing a really big presentation to a new client that I want. Before you step into that space where you're performing, take a few rounds of this 3-part breath. Let the belly expand, let the ribs expand, let your shoulders grow taller. The air is cool as you breathe in, and notice the temperature of the air as you breathe out. Shoulders soften, belly softens, and ribs soften. Just a round or two can shift you into a space where your prefrontal cortex is accessed and activated, meaning all of that history, all of that rehearsal that you did before this space, you're able to access those moments and utilize them for your performance. Now, one of the things that I teach in yoga, I always teach this breath, and I teach us how to find the breath anywhere. Why? Because I want us to learn when we're in moments of challenge, those moments where we're stepping up towards our goal, how to be able to think clearly. And this breath can help us do that. I mean, the evidence shows we're seeing more activity in our neural network that is our executive thought. Very interesting. I also like to consider that we've done this breath our whole life. Every time you sigh out, it is basically this exhalation, right? So we have practiced this breath. It's been intuitive to us to shift us into a space of ease. All we do is we just learn to add a rich, full inhalation with it, and we know that it can affect our performance and our mindset. So it's pretty cool, right? And you can do that breath anywhere. And like I said, it doesn't take, you don't have to do it 10 minutes. You could do just a quick round or 2 of it just to get grounded and focused and ready for your presentation. So, we are running up on time, I tell you. We'll do one more activity together. So I would like for you to do just a little bit of mindful movement with me in addition to our breath. What I guess I'll show you, yeah, I'll show you a quick stretch for a few different areas that people are commonly tight or feel a little bit of tension in, okay? So first thing we'll do is something that we can do at the desk, right? So we're gonna do this just seated, and this is one of my favorite activities to release your low back and to release your hips, okay? So for this activity, we're gonna find ourselves comfortably seated in our chair. We're just gonna give ourselves enough room so that we can bring our left foot up to rest on our right thigh. So bring your left foot up, let the left foot rest, the left heel rest on the thigh, and that left knee just softly open, and then gently lean forward. Just giving a stretch. You're going to feel this through the low back. You're going to feel this to your left glute, up into the back and down into your quad, down into your hamstring. Now add the breath to this. Rich, full breath in. Rich, full breath out. Shoulders soften, belly softens, and even that left hip begins to soften and release. Next breath, just like the last. Gently rise up, take your time with arrival, and release that heel down away from the thigh. Let's come into the other side. Right foot comes up, right foot and ankle rests on your left thigh. And then gently lean in with the heart, lean in with the head and the shoulders. Find that rich, full inhale in, cool on the inhale. Rich, full exhale out. Warm and softening on the exhales. Notice how that parasympathetic shows up in the muscles. That the hip releases, the low back softens. Here for 2. Here for 1. Gently rising up. And release that foot down off the leg. Now take a moment to notice how you feel to your right hip versus your left, through the back of your legs, through the front of your hips, through the front of your thighs. And that's just one stretch that we could do in our day to release our low back, to get back into our bodies, to get back into the moment, to get out of that rumination cycle and get back into clarity and focus and creativity to be able to perform and show up differently. So in today's content, we practiced a few skill sets. We talked about the benefit of mindfulness on the mind, right? We talked about the neural networks actually shifting and changing, right? We looked at the hippocampus with more neural connectivity, which is important for memory. We talked about executive function and that shift in the neural network and density in the prefrontal cortex, which can help us with emotion regulation and performance improvement. We see a shift in how we feel, like not just how we feel physically, but how we feel emotionally, that we shift into more of a positive side of that sensation. So we're shifting into that side of the spectrum of positive emotions like happiness, excitement, calm, focus, right? We're shifting away from scattered and disoriented and maybe overwhelmed or depressed, all through things like flow, entering a flow state, which many of us do. We just didn't know that was meditation, from breath, and from maybe even just taking some time to honor the ass, shifting into some sensory engagements like having water close by, enjoying a stretch when you feel tense in a certain part of the body, finding a breath that shifts us into a space of rest and ease. So take a moment just to consider, what are a few ways that you could integrate some of our practices into your daily function? Just take a moment, write a few ideas down on that pen and paper that are handy. So what are some ways that you could implement some of our evidence and some of our techniques into your daily function? And then take a moment, if you're comfortable, and drop an idea into the chat. So drop a commitment. What's one thing that you could do? Like, I could take a breath before I go do a big presentation. If you'd like to share it just by talking, that's fine too. You can either drop it into the chat through typing, or you can just share it with the rest of the group vocally. What's one thing that you can commit to?
So the question is, one thing that we could commit to before we go do a presentation. I think probably trying to relax in some of the ways that you've given us. I've been in and out of the conversation because I'm trying to get ready to prepare to go to California. So I'm trying to participate because I see no one else is answering. But for me, I just try to meditate. I try to pray before I do anything, just so I can just clear my mind of negative thoughts and encourage myself.
Thank you. That was great. I appreciate that. And thank you for participating while you're busy doing other things and preparing for your trip. Safe travels to you. Yeah, prayer and meditation,
Thank you.
absolutely. Maybe doing a few rounds of breath.
Hey, Jen, this is Joylyn Stover in the Principles of Marketing class.
Hi.
Can I wait? I'll turn on our camera. Oh, it's just me. Well, it looks like just me, but guess what? The entire marketing class is here with us.
Hey, hello. Hi, everybody.
Tell Jen, somebody check in with one thing that we're gonna do.
Take breaks.
Ravenwood said we're gonna take mindful breaks.
Love that.
Love that. Yeah.
Stretch.
And stretch. Rashawn said stretch. Anybody else? DJ learned something. Yeah. You're always right here. Tell her. Right there. There you are. Tell her what you
Deep
want.
breaths. Deep breaths is good.
Be present.
Shut
Be
up.
present.
Yes, no. Deep breaths.
That was beautiful.
June, you want to say anything? Yeah, okay. Cool, thanks, Jen. We appreciate this. It was very good.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening.
And participating.
Mhm.
Thank you to everyone who participated in Jennifer's session, the mindfulness session. I'm so excited to have this captured on recording so that we can do this on a regular basis. We can all even meet up in the library and do it. Jennifer, thank you for investing in our mindfulness, to be able to have this reset and this energy charge in a quiet way is really going to be helpful for everyone as they continue to grow as courageous leaders. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Thanks for the time. Enjoy
You're
your day,
welcome.
everybody. Bye.
Thank you, you too.
Bye. Bye.